Hi, my name's Don Egan. I'm the founder of RSVP Trust, and this is the Portable Jesus. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Portable Jesus. Obviously, for many of us, this year is going to be very, very different sort of Christmas to previous years. I really enjoy Christmas as time for fun, family and friends and food. But I know for others, Christmas can be a dark time of loneliness or frustration with family and friends. But whatever your view of Christmas, I pray that you get some value out of today's message. One Christmas time I remember from being about 8 or 9 years old was when my primary school teacher, Miss Sharples, read to the class the story of The Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Miss Sharples had thick bottle-bottom glasses and was an ageing spinster, although come to think of it, perhaps she wasn't as old as I think I remember her. But when you're 8 or 9, anyone over 20 years old seems old. So anyway, at this time of year at Christmas, towards the end of the classroom time, she would sit down and, I guess for about half an hour, read a chapter of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol to the class. We all sat round on the floor. Now, we definitely had the atmosphere for Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol because although we had lights on in the classroom, outside the big windows was swirling fog and darkness and the odd street light, and also not too far from the school, an old derelict house, which I imagine was like the house of Scrooge. Marley was dead to begin with. There was no doubt about that at all. That's how she started the story. And this was probably the first time I'd heard the story of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol and Ebenezer Scrooge. And she took us through the story where Scrooge is visited by 3 different ghosts of Christmas. And almost everyone in the world has probably seen the multiple films that have been made of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. The first ghost to visit Ebenezer Scrooge was the ghost of Christmas past. And many people today are haunted by their past. Even as I'm talking about Miss Sharples and that classroom back when I was 8 or 9 years old, another story comes to my mind when we had the tuck shop out and you could buy for a couple of pennies some biscuits to have with your milk at break time. And one day Miss Sharples gave me the job of taking the biscuits back into the storeroom after the break time had finished. And I'd bought a couple legitimately during break time, but they were like the best biscuits I'd ever tasted. And suddenly she gave me what was remaining in the packet and told me to take it in the storeroom. And I'm now confessing to you here on YouTube that when I went into that storeroom as an 8 or 9 year old boy, I so wanted another biscuit. I stole a biscuit, and I've carried the guilt of that today. Now, many of us, including myself, are sometimes haunted by things more serious than a small child stealing an extra biscuit at break time. We can be haunted by our own past. In Matthew chapter 1, we read these words about the mother of Jesus. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. And I did my little sin that day, nicking that biscuit. And perhaps we don't like the word sin, but it really just means falling short. And most of us feel that as we look back to the past, there have definitely been times when we have fallen short of our own standards, let alone anybody else's standards. I certainly fell short that day nicking that biscuit. And in other more serious things, as I look back at my life, I did fall short. But the good news about the birth of Christ is that his whole purpose was to come and release us from the past. The gist of the gospel is that Jesus didn't come to rub it in, he came to rub it out. And the best way to deal with our past is to let God forgive it and erase the things we did wrong. For others, we're haunted by the past because somebody did wrong to us, and that's very difficult to let go of. And we may need counselling or some sort of therapy to work that through. But in my experience, God can be involved in that process too. Most people will be familiar with the old song Amazing Grace, How Sweet the Sound. That was actually written by a horrendous slave owner. But he didn't write it while he was a slave owner. But he had an encounter with Christ, the Christ who comes to us at Christmas. And it transformed his whole life. And he worked with people like Wilberforce in Britain to overturn the slave trade and bring it to an end. So John Newton will have been haunted by the many evil things he did to slaves in the past, but he came to this revelation, and through God's help and God changing his heart, he turned not only his life around, but along with Wilberforce, turned the whole issue of slavery around by working to bring the abolition of slavery. And I've known drug dealers who just felt they were trapped in that whole arena of drug dealing, who had an encounter with Christ, and they are probably haunted by what they did in the past, the drugs they sold in the past, but lives being completely transformed and renewed. I don't know what might be haunting you from your past, but if there's anything like that, today I urge you to turn to Christ, pray to him, and he can begin to deal with those ghosts of the past. And the second ghost that came to visit Scrooge was the ghost of Christmas present, not the present under the tree, but the present moment in time. And goodness me, this year of 2020 has haunted many of us. Many of the things that we planned for this last year just haven't been possible. And even now it's difficult to see an end, though the end will come to this virus. And many, including me, are very frustrated. But there are others who are haunted by the situation they live in. Maybe it's not to do with the virus, maybe just what's going on right now is not right in your life. And again, I'd urge you to seek out the Christ who comes to you at Christmas, to pray to him, to turn to him, and allow him to lay to rest this ghost of Christmas present. St. Peter, one of Jesus' closest friends, later advised us to cast all our anxiety on him, on Christ, because he cares for us. So Christ is the one onto whom we can cast our anxiety, because he does care for us. We can reach out to him in prayer. In the carol, O Little Town of Bethlehem, there is this great line where meek souls will receive him still, the dear Christ enters in. And that can be true for each one of us today. And then Scrooge is visited by the third ghost, the ghost of Christmas yet to come, or the ghost of the future. And again, many of us are haunted by what the future holds. It's estimated that over 50% of the population in the UK read their horoscopes every day. And back in the day, years ago, I used to work for a boss who always said she couldn't start the day till she'd read a horoscope. There was one New York daily paper years ago where the guy that wrote the horoscopes resigned, and they couldn't find a replacement, so they just reprinted the horoscopes from the previous years, and nobody noticed. Years before the birth of Christ, God spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, saying, I know the plans I have for you, for good and not for harm, to give you a future and a hope. Our hope for the future can be in God, through Christ. So I'd recommend that you don't try and find out what your future holds, but try and find the one who holds your future. So whatever the challenges are of your life right now, remember you don't need to be haunted by the past, you don't need to be haunted by the present, you don't need to be haunted by the future. I've been challenged over the years by many, many things, and as I look back, I can see that when I've trusted God and turned to Christ, then God brings a way through the most difficult situations. So I pray that you will draw close to Christ and Christ will draw close to you during this Christmas time, and that he will bring blessing and peace and joy to you this Christmas time. So RSVP Trust is still very busy out at work in Africa, in Rwanda specifically, and we do value your prayers and support. If you want to support us, you can drop a donation down at rsvptrust.co.uk/donate. And you can also find out about all our projects in Africa and in the UK on our website. If you felt this video added value to your day, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube and hit the red subscribe button and the little bell icon so you get notifications of new videos. And so I wish you every blessing this Christmas, and I'll see you in the next video.